Hi, and welcome to Sleep Cove with me, Christopher Fitton, the place to come for a great night's sleep. Tonight, I'm reading out a couple of Welsh fairy tales. It's just been St. David's Day, the patron saint of Wales Day, so I decided to read a couple of charming fairy tales out for you. You'll hear two fairy tales tonight. The first one is called The Two Cats, where a sorcerer tries to discover the mystery of stolen goods at an inn. The second is called The Golden Harp, where fairies grant a wish to an inspiring musician. Soon, I'm going to be putting all stories without music on my bedtime story YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description, so if you prefer your stories without music, you can go in the description and click the link to that channel. I have two YouTube channels, one containing stories and one containing meditations and hypnosis. I'll leave a link to the channels in the show notes also. Please remember to subscribe to the show to get alerts on all new free content. So please get comfortable and let's begin. The Two Cat Witches. In the old days, it was believed that the seventh son in a family of sons was a conjurer by nature. That is, he could work wonders like the fairies and excel the doctors in curing diseases. If he were the seventh son of a seventh son, he was himself a wonder of wonders. The story ran that he could even cure the shingles, which is a very troublesome disease. It is called also by a Latin name, which means a snake, because as it gets worse, it coils itself around the body. Now the eagle can attack the serpent and conquer and kill this poisonous creature to secure such power. Hugh the conjurer ate the flesh of eagles, which he wished to cure the serpent disease. He uttered words in the form of a charm, which acted as a talisman and cure. After wetting the red rash, which had broken out over the sick person's body, he muttered, "He eagle, she eagle, I send you over 9 seas, and over 9 mountains, and over 9 acres of moor and fen, where no dog shall bark, nor cow moo, and no eagle shall higher rise." After that, the patient was sure that he felt better. There was always great rivalry between the conjurers and those who made money from the pilgrims at Holy Wells and the visitors to the relic shrines. But this fellow named Hugh and the monks kept on mutually good terms. They often ate dinner together, for Hugh was a great traveller over the whole country and always had news to tell to the holy brothers who lived in cells. One night, as he was eating at an inn, 4 men came in and sat down at the table with him. By his magical power, Hugh knew that they were robbers and meant to kill him that night in order to get his money. So to divert their attention, Hugh made something like a horn to grow out of the table and then laid a spell on the robbers so that they were kept gazing at the curious thing all night long, while he went to bed and slept soundly. When he rose in the morning, he paid his bill and went away, while the robbers were still gazing at the horn. Only when the officers arrived to take them to prison did they come to themselves. Now at Betis Coed, a pretty place, there was a hotel named the Inn of Three Kegs. The shop sign hung out in front. It was a bunch of grapes, gilded and set below 3 small barrels. The inn was kept by 2 respectable ladies who were sisters. Yet, in that very hotel, several travellers, while they were asleep, had been robbed of their money. They could not blame anyone nor tell how the mischief was done. With the key in the keyhole, they had kept their doors locked during the night. They were sure that no one had entered the room. There were no signs of men's boots or of anyone's footsteps in the garden, while nothing was visible on the lock or door to show that either had been tampered with. Everything was in order as when they went to bed. Some people doubted their stories, but when they applied to Hugh the conjurer, he believed them and volunteered to solve the mystery. His motto was, "Go anywhere and everywhere, but catch the thief." When Hugh applied one night for lodging at the inn, nothing could be more agreeable than the welcome and the fine manners of his 2 hostesses. At supper time and during the evening, they all chatted together merrily. Hugh, who was never at a loss for news or stories, told about the various kinds of people and the many countries he had visited in imagination, just as if he had seen them all, though he had never set foot outside of Wales. When he was ready to go to bed, he said to the ladies, "It is my custom to keep a light burning in my room all night, but I will not ask for candles, for I have enough to last me until sunrise." So saying that, he bade them good night. Entering his room and locking the door, he undressed, but laid his clothes near at hand. He drew his trusty sword out of its sheath and laid it upon the bed beside him, where he could grasp it quickly. Then he pretended to be asleep and even snored. It was not long before, peeping between his eyelids, only half closed, he saw 2 cats come stealthily down the chimney. When in the room, the animals frisked about, and then romped and walked about in the most lively way. Then they chased each other around the bed as if they were trying to find out whether Hugh was asleep. Meanwhile, the supposed sleeper kept perfectly motionless. Soon the 2 cats came over to his clothes, and one of them put her paw into the pocket that contained his purse. At this, with one sweep of his sword, Hugh struck at the cat's paw. The beast howled frightfully, and both animals ran for the chimney and disappeared. After that, everything was quiet until breakfast time. At the table, only one of the sisters was present. Hugh politely inquired about the other. He was told that she was not well, for which Hugh said he was very sorry. After the meal, Hugh declared he must say goodbye to both the sisters, whose company he had so enjoyed the night before. In spite of the other ladies' many excuses, he was admitted to the sick lady's room. After polite greetings and mutual compliments, Hugh offered his hand to say goodbye. The sick lady smiled at once and put out her hand, but it was her left one. "Oh no," said Hugh with a laugh. "I never, in all my life, have taken anyone's left hand, and beautiful as yours is, I won't break my habit by beginning now and here." Reluctantly, and as if in pain, the sick lady put out her hand. It was bandaged. The mystery was now cleared up. The two sisters were cats. By the help of bad fairies, they had changed their forms and were the real robbers. Hugh seized the hand of the other sister and made a little cut in it, from which he drew a few drops of blood which flowed out, but the spell was over. "Henceforth," said Hugh, "you are both harmless, and I trust you will both be honest women." And they were. From that day, they were like other women, and kept one of the best of those inns, clean, tidy, comfortable, and at modest prices, for which Wales is or was noted. Neither as cats with paws, nor landladies with soaring bills, did they ever rob travellers again. The Golden Harp. Morgan is one of the oldest names in the Cymric land. It means one who lives near the sea. Every day, for centuries past, tens of thousands of Welsh folks have looked out on the great blue plain of salt water. It is just as true also that there are all sorts of Morgans. One of these, named Taffy, was like nearly all Welshmen, in that he was very fond of singing. The trouble in his case, however, was that no one but himself loved to hear his voice, which was very disagreeable. Yet of the sounds which he himself made with voice or instrument, he was an intense admirer. Nobody could persuade him that his music was poor and his voice rough. He always refused to improve. Now in Wales, the bard or poet who makes up his poetry or song as he goes along is a very important person, and it is not well to offend one of these gentlemen. In French, they call such a person by a very long name, the improvisator. These poets have sharp tongues and often say hard things about people whom they do not like. if they used whetstones or stropped their tongues of leather, as men do with their razors, to give them a keener edge, their words could not cut more terribly. Now, on one occasion, Morgan had offended one of these bards. It was while the poetic gentleman was passing by Taffy's house. He heard the jolly fellow inside singing, first at the top and then at the bottom of the scale. He would drop his voice down on the low notes, and then again rise to the highest until it ended in a screech. Someone on the street asked the poet how he liked the music, which he had heard inside. "Music?" replied the bard with a sneer. "Is that what Morgan is trying? Why, I thought it was first the mooing of an aged cow, and then the yelping of a blind dog, unable to find its way. Do you call that music?" The truth was that when the soloist had so filled himself with strong ale that his brain was fuddled, then it was hard to tell just what kind of noise he was making. It took a wise man to discover the tune, if there were any. One evening, when Morgan thought his singing unusually fine and felt sorry that no one heard him, he heard a knock. Instead of going to the door to inquire or welcome the visitor, he yelled out, "Come in." The door opened, and there stood 3 tired-looking strangers. They appeared to be travellers. One of them said, "Kind sir, we are weary and worn, and would be glad of a morsel of bread. If you should give us a little food, we shall not trouble you further." "Is that all?" said Morgan. "See there the loaf and the cheese, with a knife beside them. Take what you want and fill your bags. No man shall ever say that Taffy Morgan denied anyone food when he had any himself." Whereupon the 3 travellers sat down and began to eat. Meanwhile, without being invited to do so, their host began to sing for them. Now the 3 travellers were fairies in disguise. They were journeying over the country from cottage to cottage, visiting the people. They came to reward all who gave them a welcome and were kind to them, but to vex and play tricks upon those who were stingy, bad-tempered, or of sour disposition. Turning to Taffy before taking leave, one of them said, "You have been good to us, and we are grateful. Now what can we do for you? We have the power to grant anything you may desire. Please tell us what you would like most." At this, Taffy looked hard in the faces of the 3 strangers to see if one of them was the bard who had likened his voice in its ups and downs to a cow and a blind dog. Not seeing any familiar face, he plucked up his courage and said, "If you are not making fun of me, I'll take you a harp. And if I can have my wish in full, I want one that will play only lively tunes. No sad music for me." Here Morgan stopped. Again he searched their faces to see if they were laughing at him, and then proceeded. and something else, if I can have it, but it's really the same thing I'm asking for." "Speak on. We are ready to do what you wish," answered the leader. "I want a harp, which no matter how badly I may play, will sound out sweet and jolly music." "Say no more," said the leader, who waved his hand. There was a flood of light, and to Morgan's amazement, there stood on the floor a golden harp. But where were the three travellers? They had disappeared in a flash. Hardly able to believe his own eyes, it now dawned upon him that his visitors were fairies. He sat down back of the harp and made ready to sweep the strings. He hardly knew whether or not he touched the instrument, but there rolled out volumes of lively music as if the harp itself were mad. The tune was wild, and such as would set the feet of young folks a-going even in church. As Taffy's fingers seemed every moment to become more skillful, the livelier the music increased, until the very dishes rattled on the cupboard as if they wanted to join in. Even the chair looked as if it were about to dance. Just then, Morgan's wife and some neighbours entered the house. Immediately, the whole party, one and all, began dancing in the jolliest way. For hours, they kept up the mad whirl, yet all the while, Taffy seemed happier and the woman the merrier. No telegraph ever carried the news faster all over the region that Morgan had a wonderful harp. All the grass in the front of the house was soon worn away by the crowds that came to hear and dance. As soon as Taffy touched the harp strings, the feet of everyone, young and old, began shuffling, nor could anyone stop as long as Morgan played. Even very old, lame, and one-legged people joined in. Several old women, whom nobody had ever prevailed upon to get out of their chairs, were cured of their rheumatism. Such unusual exercise was severe for them, but it seemed to be healthful. A shrewd monk, the business manager of the monastery nearby, wanted to buy Morgan's house, set up a sanitarium, and advertise it as a holy place. He hoped thus to draw pilgrims to it and get it for a great reputation as a healing place for the lame and the halt, and the palsied and the rheumatic. Thus the monastery would be enriched and all the monks get fat. But Taffy was a happy-go-lucky fellow who cared little about money and would not sell, for with his harp he enjoyed both fun and fame. One day in the crowd that stood around his door waiting to begin to hop and whirl, Morgan espied the bard who had compared his voice to a cow and a cur. The bard had come to see whether the stories about the harp were true or not. He found, to his own discomfort, what was the fact and the reality, which were not very convenient for him. As soon as the harp music began, his feet began to go up and his legs began to kick and whirl. The more Morgan played, the madder the dance, and the wilder the antics of the crowd. And in these, the bard had to join, for he could not help himself. For they all soon began to spin round and round on the flagstones, fronting the door as if crazy. They broke the paling of the garden fence. They came into the house and knocked over the chairs and the sofa, even when they cracked their shins against the wood. They bumped their heads against the walls and ceilings, and some even scrambled over the roof and down again. The bard could no more stop his weary legs than could the other lunatics. To Morgan, his revenge was so sweet that he kept on until the bard's legs snapped and he fell down on top of people that had tumbled from sheer weariness because no more strength was left in them. Meanwhile, Morgan laughed until his jaws were tired and his stomach muscles ached. But no sooner did he take his fingers off the strings to rest them than he opened his eyes in wonder, for in a flash the harp had disappeared. He had made a bad use of the fairy's gift, and they were displeased. So both the monk and Morgan felt sorry. Yet the grass grew again when the quondam harper and singer ceased desolating the air with his quavers. The air seemed sweeter to breathe because of the silence. However, the fairies kept on doing good to the people of goodwill, and today some of the sweetest singers in Wales come from the poorest homes.